basically, the idea of the Mascage project came on because basically we had noticed, or we noticed, that there was this open call for projects on gender and aging, right? Sex, gender, and aging, which was part of the GenderNet Plus call.
Yeah.
And basically, what I noticed specifically is that most of the gender projects tended to ignore the question of age and aging, in the same way as most of the projects which were addressing aging, most of the projects in aging studies didn't consider gender as an object of analysis.
Intersection. Okay.
So exactly. So I was very interested in this intersectionality of looking at both gender and age together, the ways in which they inflect each other. But also so another gap that we addressed, I think, is that most of the aging studies, or the few aging studies, sorry, which were approached from a gender perspective, focused on women. And we thought that men were somehow ignored in most of these corpus of studies. And so we thought that it was interesting to analyze also the way in which aging and age affects what is the construction of men and masculinities. So we just decided to bring together the two fields, like masculinity, gender studies, and age and aging studies. And so that's what, from the combination of all the things, that's how the project emerged. And then finally, also the notion of bringing together this interdisciplinarity. Like we have like both social scientists and humanities scholars, because we also thought that not most of the studies in this area had come from sociology and psychology, and we thought that these studies could also be complemented by studies about representations of aging men and masculinities in literature and cinema specifically.
Yes,
and
okay,
that's why the cultural perspective. So we try to bring both societal and cultural perspective together. Yes, absolutely. We're just, because of this pandemic, our results and our project has sort of been put off, and we're a bit delayed, unfortunately, because, part of our project, the first part actually was supposed to be doing interviews with other people, other men specifically. And obviously, it's, this is a group which has been most deeply affected by the pandemic. So obviously we had to put them off.
Yes.
But
is it just postponed, or are you trying to find another way to your data?
Well, what we're trying to do, maybe we're going to try, I mean, depending on how long it lasts,
of course,
we may have to look for like alternatives. So maybe online interviews, but the thing is that we were supposed to be doing focus groups, and it's going to be difficult and challenging to do online. But anyway, let's see what happens. Let's hope that this will not last forever, because this has been like obviously totally unexpected. We didn't. But but basically, in terms of policy making, we're seeing like some differences already. We know, for example, that women tend to live longer than men. For example, there is an age difference of a life expectancy difference of about 10 years in general. So that exactly, and this is one of the big differences, which we're trying to find out why. Obviously, this might be like genetic differences, but it's not always the case, and it's not consistent. And we also think that there are social and gender differences which are causing like men and women to live differently, and also women have better life quality in general, and so maybe we think that it may be associated with risk factors associated with men, like for example, drinking more, risk behavior,
adopting risk behaviors,
exactly. So which may be gendered, so this is something that we're trying to explore, and also we're trying to see the ways in which basically, for example, the fact that the ways in which masculinity may prevent, some studies suggest, prevent some men from going more often to the doctor, for example, to get checked and to get, for example, tested for prostate cancer when they get older, and so on and so forth. So there are health issues which I think are important in terms of policy making, to make sure that older men, specifically as a group, that they do go to the doctor, because that this doesn't make them less manly, so to say, because we have this idea that they are, supposed to be independent, that they don't need anyone.
And strong, and
Exactly. And so any form of vulnerability or weakness is considered to be feminine, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Many men, old men, they just don't want to go to the doctor. And that's obviously part of the risk behavior. And I think this might be associated also with lower life expectancy in many cases. And also the ways in which all this is inflected by other issues such as social class, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. So we're trying to be very intersectional too. Might be some interesting policies in terms of EU policies, for example, encouraging older men to go more often to the doctors, to get more regular health checks, prostate cancer, especially in the case of older men, but all kinds of issues, health issues, which appear with age. Right? So,
and related to the notion of care, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The notion of taking care of oneself, and it's not anti-care.
And also the issue of autonomy, I think, is very important, because we know also that men have greater difficulties in adapting to old age than many women, especially because after retirement, for example, because of this, they are not used to. I mean, they've been used to, in many cases, to working outside, the home place for many years. So they are used to, let's say, to this kind of public aspect of themselves, but they have a great difficulty sometimes going back home when they are older and trying to adapt to the new lifestyles, because they also usually have fewer social relationships and social networks. So we see that women tend to do better, also on this, because
they adapt better.
Exactly. They tend to adapt better. They usually have lots of social activities. They tend to have bigger, friendship networks and so forth and so on. And in the case of men, they seem to be very much lost once they retire. In many cases, not all of them, but many of them.
To navigate this public / private domestic life, etc.
Exactly. So it's something important also in terms of adapting, helping men adapt to the to the post-retirement life.
Interesting.
And many of them feel useless once they retire. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Feeling of being obsolete, useless, redundant. You know what I mean? Whereas women just tend to find it easier to reinvent themselves, and to. In the case of men, it's many of them have serious issues, adapting to this new life. I think because I'm not in charge, I'm not a sociologist myself, and there are other team members who are in charge of that. And unfortunately, the whole protocol was already, underway, and it was sort of interrupted because of the pandemic. But I think that it's only men. Sorry,
only men. Right.
But we're trying to, I think, to get a wide variety, a wide sample of men, from different, sexual orientation, social class, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. But then maybe, I don't know if we might have a comparative group with women, a focus group with women. But I think that the idea is to have only men, because I think that many groups have already been conducted on older women or more groups.
So
there are very
plenty
few
of data available already.
Exactly, I think so. But as I say, I'm not the expert in sociology, so I know that usually I think that they're going to interview mostly men, as far as I know, but from you know, you know, backgrounds. So basically, we are like a group of 5 different countries, and basically, what we're trying to do is, you know, it's basically it's a consortium, as you know, right? So basically, we have different teams, national teams, and each national team is supposed to be led by a principal investigator. So we have like basically 5 different PIs, okay? And I am supposed to be the coordinator of the whole group, right? Now, the idea is that each of these groups is supposed to be multidisciplinary, okay? So we all have like social scientists and humanities scholars, okay? And each of the groups is working on different corpus. So we're all following the same methodology, which is to say we're all doing focus groups and interviews. So this is coordinated, but in different countries, so I could have this comparative perspective. Also in Israel, besides the European countries, we have Israel, which I think is going to be interesting because, you know, it's a non-European country, so it can provide between East and West, and it can provide this interesting, you know,
perspective. Yes, absolutely.
Perspective, yeah. But basically, so we're all doing the focus groups, and we're trying to coordinate that, okay, in different contexts, and we're all analyzing literatures and but basically fiction and cinema also.
Okay.
Representations of aging men in fiction and cinema.
Okay, so but each team analyzes its national corpus.
Exactly, exactly. And in our case, for example, I'm leading the Spanish group, so we're analyzing basically Spanish literature and cinema, contemporary Spanish literature and cinema, and how men are represented in that. And the idea then, obviously, is in the end to have these comparative perspectives and to see the commonalities and the differences across the different European countries plus Israel. So, and we are finding like amazing, you know, I begin to find like very interesting films, movies, novels, which are about basically, which are, you know, about older men and the different issues that they face, like, as I said, retirement, effective relationships, being a grandfather, you know, lots of things which friendships, social networks, and how these things are represented in different literary and film corpuses. We're just beginning to explore because first of all, the first half of the project was supposed to be about more like sociology, the focus interviews, the sociological part. And then the second part is going to be about literature and film. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
But actually this September, we were supposed to have this big conference in Galway, in Ireland, which was called Silver Screens. That's the title of the conference. It's still supposed to, it was organized by the Irish PI at the John Huston Film Institute. So it was supposed to be a conference only on film representations of aging masculinities. We don't know if it's going to take place or not, but we're just beginning to see, you know, the ways in which to explore. And I think that the most interesting thing is that when we tend to think of aging men, we have this image also of sometimes of decline, of like feeling less manly, you know, because they seem that they are losing their, let's say, their sexual prowess or their virility, that they are, many of them feel like this, you know, less manly, less, you know, less virile and so on and so forth. But then we also have all these books, fictions, and films, you know, which are about actually positive representations of men. So men who are managed to reinvent themselves and who are basically to rethink masculinity, these traditional notions of masculinity through aging. So as they age, they come to question themselves. And so I think it's important because they are providing, you know, how aging can be an opportunity, not just, you know, something negative, but an opportunity to rethink themselves as men, you know. So I think that this is the interesting thing, and that many of the books and films, they try to reflect the two things, right? Some men are having a very bad time, you know, aging. They don't accept that. They just use Viagra to try to stay as sexually, you know, powerful as ever, but in many cases, some men just, you know, they change, they meditate, they reflect, they become critical about the way masculinity is constructed.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, for some of them, it's a good, you know, it's an opportunity to start a new way at looking at themselves as men, you know.